Yeah.
Have you been there?
God, please, go on.
It's because it's not worth £1,000, it's worth £5,000.
Oh my God. Wow. That's amazing.
That old ring sitting at the bottom of a jewelry box might be worth more than you ever imagined. Because on Antiques Roadshow, ordinary people discovered that the pieces they almost ignored were actually rare treasures hiding incredible value. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're counting down the most valuable gemstone rings ever revealed on Antiques Roadshow. From breathtaking sapphires where one tiny detail changed everything to forgotten diamond rings that stunned experts, these are the discoveries that prove a fortune can sometimes be hiding right in front of you. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for more incredible appraisal stories. Number 1. UConn Women's Basketball Championship Rings. Starting today's list is a collection of rings that, at first glance, could easily be mistaken for ordinary pieces of sports memorabilia. But these rings do not represent just one season. They tell the story of more than 2 decades behind one of the greatest dynasties in women's college basketball history. What makes the story even more surprising is that the person who kept them was not the star everyone saw on the court. She was someone working quietly behind the scenes. So how did someone rarely seen in front of the cameras become part of UConn history? And why did the ring she received become something almost impossible to recreate?
I started working for the best coach in the country in 1994, and because of that, I have been along for the ride with his success, and I have 11 national championship rings from the UConn women's basketball program.
That detail from 1994 is where the entire story begins. Just 1 year later, UConn won its first national championship and started a journey that would eventually turn the program into a symbol of dominance in women's college basketball. Individually, each ring already represents an unforgettable season. But when all 11 are placed together, they become a timeline made of gold, stones, and history connecting the eras of Rebecca Lobo, Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Maya Moore, and Breanna Stewart. The peak came between 2013 and 2016, when UConn captured 4 consecutive national titles, proving this was not just one great team, but a system capable of creating champions generation after generation. And that is why these rings are not valued like ordinary jewelry. The true importance is provenance. The guest did not buy these rings separately or build the collection piece by piece. She earned them because she was actually there, moving with the program through each historic moment. A single championship ring can already attract collectors. But a complete collection connected to one person, documenting the rise of an entire dynasty, becomes something closer to a small archive than simple memorabilia. According to the guest, only a few people inside UConn had a complete collection like this. So the expert could not simply multiply the value of one ring by 11. The real question was, how do you value something almost impossible to recreate, carrying the entire legacy of UConn's championship history?
And we are all in total agreement that a collection like this is so special and so important. I'd insure it for $100,000. No question about it.
Okay.
I think it could be more valuable in the future as time goes by and people realize what an incredible thing this actually represents.
That insurance value was not just about the championships. It also recognized more than 2 decades of dedication from someone most fans never saw, but who helped support the program behind the scenes. The collection proved that sports history does not only belong to the athletes holding the trophies. Number 2. 1950s American Platinum Diamond Ring. The next case begins with a ring whose original value was not about diamonds or platinum. It started with a moment this family would never forget. What was supposed to be a normal trip on the river suddenly became a terrifying memory, followed by an emotional decision from a husband who had just realized he almost lost the most important person in his life. A houseboat disappeared, and in its place, a ring appeared. For years, the family remembered it through one simple inside joke. But when that same ring finally arrived at the appraisal table, the expert discovered there was much more behind it than just a sentimental gift.
And Daddy was so upset, he sold the houseboat the next day and bought this ring for my mother. And we used to always kid her saying, "Mama, you're wearing our houseboat." And we were just glad to have our mother safe and sound, you know.
The phrase, "Mama, you're wearing our houseboat," instantly made this ring different. Because it was never purchased simply to show luxury. It was a way for a husband to turn the fear from that accident into something meaningful for his wife. But that emotional story was only the first layer. What the expert discovered next revealed the hidden value inside this piece. This was an American platinum diamond ring from around the 1950s. At the center was a round, brilliant-cut diamond weighing nearly 3.5 carats, a size large enough to immediately catch the attention of any jewelry expert. This cutting style is designed to maximize light, giving the diamond stronger brightness and sparkle as it moves. But the center stone was not the entire story. Surrounding it were additional diamonds, including round stones and baguette-cut diamonds, bringing the total diamond weight of the ring to more than 5 carats. Combined with the platinum mounting, high-quality craftsmanship, and its well-preserved condition, the ring was far beyond an ordinary family jewelry piece. The father originally paid around $5,000 for it. But decades later, after considering the diamond size, overall quality, and complete design, the story of the houseboat on her finger was about to take a completely unexpected turn.
Above 5 carats. The retail value today for this ring is in the range of $60,000 to $70,000.
Jeez, oh, Pedo.
From $5,000 to a value of $60,000 to $70,000. The guest's first reaction was realizing she needed insurance. But what makes this ring unforgettable is not only the number. To collectors, it is a valuable 1950s platinum diamond ring. But to this family, it represents the memory of a day when everything almost changed forever. The houseboat was gone, but the story behind it remained inside this diamond. And after all those years, the family finally discovered that the gift born from such an emotional moment was not only a precious memory, it was also a hidden treasure worth tens of thousands of dollars. Number 3. French Art Deco Diamond Ring. The next case begins with a ring that was almost completely misidentified. There was no luxury jewelry box, no special family history behind it, and it was not even sold as a real diamond ring. But one small detail made the buyer feel that something was not quite right. The sparkle looked different. That unusual fire made her take a closer look, and that was when a few tiny marks on the ring shank started revealing a completely different story.
I bought it at auction, got it home, and I noticed it had a lot of sparkle. It was sold to me as a cubic zirconia in silver. So it really had a lot of fire. So I got under a microscope and started noticing little symbols on the outside of the shank and did a little research into one of the marks, the dog head, platinum, a French mark.
That small discovery changed everything about this ring. A piece sold as cubic zirconia set in silver somehow carried a mark connected to French platinum. And that immediately raised one important question. Why would someone use a platinum mount for a fake stone? In antique jewelry, tiny hallmarks like this can become crucial clues. They can reveal the metal, the place of testing, and sometimes even the period when a piece was created. The dog head mark on this ring suggested it belonged to a completely different world. Early 20th century French fine jewelry. This was also the era when Art Deco design became highly influential, bringing jewelry towards sharper, more balanced, geometric, and modern forms. Platinum became the perfect material for this style because it was strong and helped diamonds stand out even more. But the biggest surprise was still hidden in the stones. What was once believed to be cubic zirconia was actually real diamond. At the center was a diamond weighing around 1.5 carats, surrounded by smaller trapezoidal diamonds. The clever arrangement created the illusion that the entire face of the ring was one large diamond, even though it was actually multiple stones working together to create a stronger visual effect. A ring purchased for around $30, once dismissed as an inexpensive imitation, actually had a platinum mount, a French hallmark, real diamonds, and an elegant Art Deco design. The ring itself never changed. It was valuable the entire time. The only difference was that for years nobody had correctly read the clues hidden in plain sight.
Altogether, given the carat weight, in a retail setting, I would say a conservative selling price would be in the $25,000 to $30,000 price range.
Amazing.
Narration. From around $30 to $25,000 or even $30,000. The entire discovery started because the buyer did not ignore the feeling that something about this ring was different. Number 4. David Webb Burmese Ruby and Diamond Ring. The next case begins with a ring that even its owner did not fully understand. And finally, just a few small gemstones can completely change the entire story.
Well, it came to me through my godmother's daughter, who's now 93, and she and my mother were best of friends. She had no children, and this was her second husband's, first wife's, mother's jewelry.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is.
Just like the experts said, this was not an easy journey to follow. The ring was not simply passed from mother to daughter across generations. Instead, it traveled through a much more complicated path before finally reaching the guest. At first, it may have looked like a beautiful ruby and diamond ring, but after taking a closer look, the experts started noticing the details that made it different. The ring combined ruby, diamond, platinum, and 18-karat gold with a design far more powerful than an ordinary piece of jewelry. But the precious materials were only the first layer. The bigger discovery came when the ring was identified as a creation by David Webb. For collectors, that name immediately moved the piece into another category. David Webb became known for bold 20th century designs, using colorful gemstones, sculptural gold, and a distinctive style that was instantly recognizable. When a ring carries the signature of a designer, it is no longer valued only by the weight of the gold or the stones inside. It becomes signed jewelry where buyers are also searching for the design, the name, and the creative identity behind the piece. But the most important layer was still hidden in the rubies. In the world of gemstones, origin and treatment can dramatically change value. Burmese rubies have long been highly desired by collectors, especially when they remain in their natural state without heat treatment. So if these stones could be certified as Burmese unheated rubies, this would no longer be just a beautiful David Webb ring. It would become a combination of a famous designer, high-quality materials, and gemstones with a truly special origin.
That certification and being labeled Burmese rubies that are unheated in a David Webb ring from the late 50s and the 1960s. This type of an item at auction would have an estimate of $8,000 to $12,000.
Really?
Yes.
That surprised reaction is easy to understand. In just a few minutes, a family ring with a complicated history had its value uncovered layer by layer. The object itself never changed. But the way the expert understood it changed everything. From a ruby and diamond ring, it became a piece of David Webb signed jewelry. And with the possibility of Burmese unheated rubies, the story reached another level. That is what makes antique jewelry so fascinating. The true value is not always visible at first glance. It comes from the questions waiting to be answered. Who created it, what period it came from, and how special the stones inside really are. When all of those elements come together, an ordinary family piece can become a hidden treasure that even the owner never expected. Number 5. Pugin-Hardman Decade Ring. The next case begins with a ring that would be very easy to overlook. There is no large diamond at the center. No bright gemstone that immediately captures everyone's attention. And based on size alone, many people might assume this is just a small antique family ring. But sometimes, the smallest objects are hiding the biggest stories. Because the value of a ring does not always come from an expensive stone. Sometimes it comes from history, meaning, and a background that is almost impossible to recreate.
Well, you know the expression rare as hen's teeth, don't you?
Yes.
You have brought me the mother of all hen's teeth here. Really? This is an extremely rare expression of jewelry.
When the expert used a comparison like that, he was not simply talking about a beautiful object. He was talking about something incredibly difficult to find. At first glance, this might look like a small gold ring with a garnet. But the real secret was hidden in the details most people would never notice. There are 10 small beads around the ring, and they were not created just for decoration. This is a decade ring, a miniature form of a rosary, where each bead represents a prayer and a religious tradition. It is both a piece of jewelry and an object connected to personal faith. The ring is made from 22-karat gold and features a cabochon garnet, but the materials alone are not what make it so special. The detail that changes everything is the provenance. The ring has a connection to Pugin-Hardman, a name linked to the Gothic Revival movement and the history of British design. Augustus Welby Pugin was an important figure in Gothic Revival, where design was not limited to grand architecture but extended into even the smallest objects. After Pugin's time, the Hardman family continued this tradition through metalwork, stained glass, and religious pieces. So this ring is not simply viewed as gold with a gemstone. It is a combination of craftsmanship, faith, and a very specific design history. An antique garnet ring can be found, but a decade ring with the Pugin-Hardman background, story, and rarity is something completely different. That is why the expert was not only valuing the materials, he was valuing a piece of history captured inside a small ring.
So, without a shadow of doubt, it's worth £8,000.
Oh my God. Fantastic. Oh, that dear little ring.
£8,000 for one small ring, a number that the owner could hardly believe. But after understanding the story behind it, the size was no longer the most important thing. Because this ring does not impress through sparkle. It impresses through depth. Through 10 tiny prayer beads, 22-karat gold, Pugin-Hardman provenance, and a connection to an important period of British design. For collectors, that is something almost impossible to replace. An object that is not only worn on a finger, but also preserves traces of faith, family, and history. And sometimes in the world of antiques, the most special treasures are the small things that many people would easily overlook. Number 6, 1920s star sapphire and diamond ring. The next case begins with a ring that had been sitting quietly in the dark for years. Not because it was damaged, not because the family had forgotten about it, but simply because it was too large, too noticeable, and perhaps too difficult for the owner to wear regularly. But some gemstones only reveal their true beauty when they finally meet the right light. And this ring was not just waiting to be worn again. It was waiting for someone to recognize what was hidden inside the stone at its center.
Where had it been hiding?
Really?
Really?
In a little box.
And how long has it been there for?
Probably about 10 years.
And has it come out, and have you worn it within that 10 years?
No, I've never worn it.
So where had it come from?
It was originally belonged to my great aunt. She then, when she died, it went to my mother, who then gave it to me.
10 years inside a small box. That was long enough for a family jewel to almost become a preserved memory. But when the expert examined it more closely, the ring started revealing why it was so special. At the center was a star sapphire. Unlike ordinary sapphires, its greatest beauty was not only about color or size. It came from a phenomenon called asterism, where the right angle of light creates the appearance of a 6-rayed star moving across the surface of the stone. What makes this even more fascinating is that the effect comes from the natural structure inside the sapphire itself. Tiny inclusions, which are often considered flaws in many gemstones, are exactly what create the most remarkable feature of this stone. And in this case, the sapphire also had an impressive size, around 40 carats. A star sapphire of that scale was already enough to attract attention, but its Ceylon origin made the story even more interesting. Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka, has long been one of the world's most famous sources for high-quality sapphires. The ring was also set in a platinum setting from around the 1920s, during the Art Deco period, with baguette diamonds on the sides helping highlight the center stone. So this was not just a large ring that had been left inside a box. It was a combination of a special sapphire, period design, valuable materials, and a family story passed through generations. And after years hidden away, the real question became, how would the market value a gemstone that had been waiting for the light for so long?
What if I was to say to you that at the right auction, I would say this would be in the region of around £6,000 to £8,000.
Maybe I will wear it then.
The most special part was that the ring never actually lost its beauty. It had simply been waiting for the right moment to be recognized again. because with a star sapphire, the real magic only appears when the light finally reaches the surface. Number 7. Rare John Donald Sapphire Ring. The next case begins with a ring that even its owner did not realize was something truly special. There was no mysterious story behind it. No family legend claiming it was a hidden treasure. It was simply a piece of jewelry kept for many years and rarely given much attention. But sometimes, what makes a ring valuable is not only the gemstone at the center, it is the person who created it, the style behind it, and the reason an expert can recognize that this is not an ordinary design.
They were given to my mother many years ago, and I don't really know the history of either of them.
And who gave them to your mother?
My father.
So what interests me is that these jewels are so different.
Yes, yes. Well, this was given to my mother as a 25th wedding anniversary ring.
And when was that?
That was in 1974.
At first, this was simply a 25th wedding anniversary gift from a father to a mother. A beautiful ring, but one that was too large and noticeable to be worn regularly. However, the very thing that made it difficult to wear was exactly what caught the expert's attention. Because this ring was not designed to disappear on someone's hand, it was created to make a statement. The important clue was the name John Donald. For collectors, this was not just a signature on a piece of jewelry. John Donald was one of the designers who helped transform modern British jewelry in the 20th century, bringing it closer to art and sculpture. Instead of creating only traditional rings, he viewed each piece as a three-dimensional structure that could be worn, and this sapphire ring clearly represents that idea. The blue sapphire at the center does not stand alone. It is surrounded by a sculptural design where diamonds and gold create a sense of movement instead of simply holding the stone in place. That is why the value of this ring is not only about the sapphire or the diamonds. It comes from being signed designer jewelry. Collectors are not only searching for precious materials, they are searching for style, reputation, and the creative identity behind the piece. A beautiful sapphire ring can be found. But a piece carrying the style of John Donald, representing an important period of modern British jewelry, is a completely different story.
And this ring here, which I really love, at auction, that would be between £5,000 to £7,000.
Right. Keep that safe. Wow.
You're the custodian of a jewel that really changed the history of modern
£5,000 to £7,000. But what makes this ring memorable is not only the number. The expert did not just describe it as a valuable piece of jewelry. She described the owner as someone preserving a piece of design history. Number 8. Renaissance Revival Poison Ring. The next case begins with a ring that looks like it came straight out of a secret story. It does not have a large gemstone at the center. It does not look like the classic jewelry pieces most people are used to seeing. Instead, it has a strange appearance, almost like a tiny creature hiding something. And for years, the family truly believed there was a mysterious story behind this ring. But on Antiques Roadshow, sometimes the legend is only the beginning. The more important question is what truth is actually hidden underneath that story.
My grandmother saw it in a jewelry store window in San Francisco in the early 1920s or before, and she was quite taken with it, and she bought it. And she called it a poison dart ring, but apparently there are no darts involved.
How did she come to the idea that it's a poison dart ring?
It has a little hole in it through which...
The story of a poison dart ring immediately makes this piece fascinating. It sounds like the kind of secret ring that could appear in an old royal mystery. But the expert quickly confirms one thing. There are no hidden darts inside. However, once that layer of legend is removed, the ring reveals another kind of value. This is a piece of Renaissance Revival jewelry, not an actual Renaissance-era ring, but a creation designed to capture the spirit of that period. During the late 19th century, many craftsmen began looking back to the past for inspiration, using historic imagery, symbolic creatures, and traditional techniques to create highly artistic objects. And this ring clearly represents that idea. It is made from 18-karat gold and shaped like a salamander or a small creature, making it feel more like an object of curiosity than an ordinary ring. The rose-cut diamonds, table-cut diamonds, and enamel details all add to the antique feeling that the maker wanted to recreate. Even more interesting, the ring can actually open. Compartment rings like this were not necessarily made to hold poison. They could be used to keep small objects with personal meaning. But that hidden space is exactly what created its mystery and allowed people's imagination to continue for generations. So the value of this ring is not only about gold or diamonds. It comes from the unusual design, the craftsmanship, the family story, and a sense of mystery that very few pieces of jewelry can carry.
We feel that at auction, this ring would take an estimate in the range of $5,000 to $7,000.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's not for sale.
$5,000 to $7,000. Not for an actual poison dart ring, but for a piece carrying design history, craftsmanship, and a story memorable enough to survive through time. The response, "It's not for sale," also shows that this ring means far more than its appraisal value. The family legend may not have been completely accurate, but it kept this object alive through generations. And in the end, the truth behind it was still special in a different way. The ring did not need to hide something dangerous to become valuable. Because sometimes in the world of antiques, the most fascinating part is not whether every detail of a legend is true. It is what that legend helps us discover. Number 9. René Lalique Art Nouveau Ring. The next case begins with a ring so small that many people could easily overlook it. There is no large diamond, no brightly colored gemstone, and no extravagant appearance that would immediately make someone think it was an extremely valuable piece. But in the world of antiques, sometimes the smallest objects hold the biggest stories. And with this ring, the secret was not hidden in its size. It was hidden in a name found inside.
And tell me, who gave it to you?
Old gentleman who lived next door. We made a lot of
It was on his own, left on his own, and we looked after him and so on. He was 94 years old.
And did he know about whatever?
I don't really know.
This was not a piece purchased from a major auction or passed down through a wealthy family. It was simply a gift from an elderly neighbor who'd been cared for by the couple. And perhaps even they did not realize just how special this little ring truly was. Everything changed when they discovered the name Lalique. René Lalique was not just a jewelry maker. He was one of the most important artists of the Art Nouveau movement, someone who helped change the way the world looked at jewelry. For Lalique, value did not only come from large diamonds or expensive gemstones, jewelry could become a miniature work of art. And this ring represents exactly that idea. The special detail is the pliqué à jour enamel technique. Unlike ordinary enamel, this method creates almost transparent layers of enamel, allowing light to pass through like a tiny stained glass window. In Lalique's hands, it became a way to capture nature, color, and movement. Every small detail was not simply made for decoration. It was designed to transform the ring into something that felt alive. That is why collectors do not see it as just a small piece of jewelry. They see the Lalique signature, the difficult craftsmanship, the Art Nouveau style, and the mark of a great artist. A ring can be small in size, but the story and value behind it can be something much bigger.
People collect these things, and if it turned up in a sale, two collectors wanting it very badly,
Yes,
I think maybe 5,000, maybe 6,000 wouldn't be completely mad.
5,000 to 6,000 pounds for one small ring. A number that might seem surprising if someone only looked at its appearance. But collectors are not just paying for the materials. They are searching for the Lalique name, the craftsmanship, and a piece of Art Nouveau history. What makes this even more special is that the ring may have once been kept by someone who never fully knew its true value. But it was still preserved, passed on, and eventually recognized for what it really was. It did not need a giant gemstone or a dramatic design. Just one small signature inside was enough to reveal the entire story. Because sometimes in the world of antiques, the greatest treasures do not need to stand out immediately. They only need to wait for the right person to look closely enough and discover what has been hidden all along. Number 10. Rare 1727 Memento Mori Ring. The next case begins with a ring that looks completely different from ordinary jewelry. It was not created to represent romance. It was not designed to impress people with a large precious gemstone. Instead, it carries symbols that many people today might find unusual: a skeleton, time, and death. But that is exactly what makes this ring so special. Because in another period of history, jewelry was not only made for beauty, it could also be a way for people to preserve memories and remind themselves of how limited human life truly is.
It was left to my grandmother,
Yes.
And it was left by some ladies that she was friendly with, and they had connections with the Melville family in London, to do with theatre, I'm led to believe, something like that.
The family story behind this ring was no longer completely preserved. Only a few pieces of information remained about the people who once owned it and a vague connection to London. But the real secret was already hidden on the ring itself. This is a Memento Mori ring. The phrase means, remember that one day everyone must die. It may sound dark, but centuries ago, this was a very familiar idea in European culture. Jewelry like this was not created simply to frighten people. It was created to remember those who had passed away and keep their memory alive. The ring is made from gold, decorated with black enamel, and covered with symbols of mortality. The skeleton, hourglass, crossed bones, and grave-digging tools all deliver the same message: time is always moving forward. But the most important detail is the inscription inside. It reveals that the ring was made in memory of Priscilla Wilkinson, who died in 1727 at the age of 78. Just one small inscription transformed this object from a general symbol of death into the story of a real person. For collectors, details like these are extremely important. They are not just looking for an old ring. They are looking for age, symbolism, condition, and a story that the object has managed to preserve for hundreds of years. That is why this ring is not valued by the weight of its gold. Its true value comes from the fact that it can still tell a story from almost 3 centuries ago.
And I think possibly if you put that into an auction, you could reasonably expect between £4,000 and £6,000 for it.
That's okay. All right, thank you very much.
Almost 300 years after Priscilla Wilkinson passed away, her name is still preserved inside this small object. The people who once knew her may have disappeared long ago. But the ring continues to do exactly what it was created to do: preserve a memory. That is what makes Memento Mori jewelry so fascinating. Number 11, yellow diamond and platinum ring. This next case begins with a ring that stayed in the same family for more than a century. It did not have a huge gemstone that shocked people at first glance, a famous jewelry signature inside the band, or a dramatic story connected to history. But sometimes the true value of a ring is hidden in much quieter details: a special color, careful craftsmanship, and a story that has survived through generations.
This ring was given to my grandmother from my grandfather's an engagement present, and they were married in 1915, and I don't know too much about it. I think it's a canary diamond, but I'm not positive, and I think it's platinum, but we've never had it appraised or anything like that.
This was more than just a piece of jewelry kept inside the family. It began as an engagement ring from 1915, passed down through generations before finally being examined by an expert. The owner believed the stone might be a canary diamond, but in the world of diamonds, color can completely change the story. While a yellow tint can lower the value of a traditional white diamond, fancy colored diamonds are judged differently. In those stones, a strong and attractive color becomes the feature collectors are looking for. And that was what made this center diamond interesting. But the stone was only one part of the discovery. The platinum mounting also revealed the period and quality of the ring. During the early 20th century, platinum was highly valued in fine jewelry because it allowed craftsmen to create strong but extremely delicate designs. The garland motif around the diamond reflected an era where beauty was not about being the biggest or most dramatic piece, but about balance, detail, and craftsmanship. Even without the signature of a famous jewelry maker, the way the diamond, platinum, and design worked together showed that this was a carefully made piece. After more than 100 years, the ring was no longer only a family keepsake. It became a combination of a unique diamond, an elegant period design, and a personal story that had been protected for generations.
For auction purposes, I would estimate this to be worth anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000.
Great.
Yeah.
$4,000 to $6,000. That value did not come from a massive stone or a famous brand name. It came from the yellow diamond, the platinum work, and the history carried inside the ring for over a century. The special thing is that this piece already mattered to the family before they ever knew the appraisal. The expert simply revealed another layer of its identity. It was not just an old engagement ring, but a piece of early 20th century fine jewelry that continued carrying the story of the marriage it was created to celebrate. And sometimes the greatest value of a ring is not only found in the stone itself, but in the history that remains with it. Number 12. Victorian 5-stone diamond ring. This next case begins with a ring that many people might judge only by looking at the diamonds. How large are the stones? Would it be worth more if they were removed and turned into something modern? But in antique jewelry, sometimes the greatest value is not found by changing a piece. It is found in everything the piece has managed to keep, because this ring does not only carry diamonds, it carries a family story, a connection to the past, and a small piece of the Victorian era that survived for more than a century.
The ring belonged to my great-grandmother.
Who happens to be this lady here?
That's that lady there, yes.
In her court dress, perhaps, with fine lace and pearls, and that signals a pretty elevated status, doesn't it?
She was married to a guy called Clement Smith, and he was Queen Victoria's vicar.
Those few details immediately changed the story behind this ring. It was no longer just an old piece of jewelry. It belonged to a real person, with a family history and a connection to the world of Queen Victoria through Clement Smith. But its value was not because it was a royal artifact. What fascinated the expert was how much of its original identity had survived. This is a Victorian 5-stone diamond ring, a 19th century style where multiple diamonds work together instead of relying on one large center stone. Over time, many antique rings have been altered. The stones are removed, recut, or placed into modern settings because people believe that will make them more valuable. But once that happens, something impossible to replace disappears, the original history. This ring was special because it still kept the setting, craftsmanship, and feeling of the period when it was created. Collectors are not only looking for diamonds. They are looking for pieces that still carry their original story. That is why the expert did not see this as a ring that should be taken apart. He saw it as a piece of the 19th century that had survived almost exactly as it was meant to be.
And this would be a complete travesty because this is a mid-19th century ring looking absolutely wonderful as it is. And I don't think anybody would dream much of doing that. So very pretty, original condition, enviable, marketable. So £3,000 to £5,000.
£3,000 to £5,000. But the real lesson was not only about the price. The value came from the fact that the ring remained unchanged after more than 150 years. If someone removed the diamonds, the stones would still exist. But the story around them would disappear. And that is what makes this Victorian 5-stone diamond ring special. Sometimes in antiques, the most valuable thing is not making something look newer. It is protecting the history that is already there. Number 13. Castellani Julius Caesar Sapphire Intaglio Ring. And at first glance, this ring could look like just another antique sapphire ring. But in the world of antique jewelry, sometimes the greatest value is hidden in the smallest details. A tiny carving, a small mark, a name hidden within the piece. And with this ring, everything started with a final gift left behind by a close friend.
It was left to me from a very dear friend who I'd known for many years, and he passed quite recently. I'd not seen him for nearly 2 years though, and I just got a letter out of the blue saying that I'd been left a load of his things.
At first, this ring did not enter the story as an expensive collector's item. It was a memory from a friend who had passed away, someone who loved art and objects with deeper stories behind them. But when the experts started looking closer, the ring slowly revealed a completely different level of value. The blue stone at the center was not just a sapphire, it was a sapphire intaglio. Instead of adding an image onto the surface, the intaglio technique requires an artist to carve directly into the stone, creating a miniature work of art inside an extremely hard material. And the figure carved into this sapphire was Julius Caesar, one of the most famous names from ancient Rome. But the detail that truly changed everything was not only the carving, it was the maker behind it. A small mark showing two-letter C's facing away from each other connected the ring to Castellani, one of the most important jewelry ateliers in 19th century Rome. Castellani became famous for reviving inspiration from ancient Greece and Rome, creating pieces that were not only decorative but also carried history and artistic meaning. That gave this small ring several layers of value. It was a sapphire. It was an Intaglio artwork. It carried the image of Julius Caesar. And most importantly, it carried the mark of a jeweler recognized by collectors. Something that first looked like a simple ring was actually holding a story that stretched across centuries.
Because it's not worth £1,000, it's worth £5,000.
Oh my God.
£5,000? But that number was only one part of what made this ring special. For collectors, the value came from Castellani, the Intaglio technique, and the connection to ancient-inspired art. But for the owner, it was still a final gift from an important friend. That is what makes antique jewelry different. One object can preserve hundreds of years of history while still holding a deeply personal human story. This ring did not capture attention because of its size. It captured attention because of what was hidden inside it, an ancient symbol, the mark of an important artist, and the memory of the person who chose to leave it behind. Number 14. Boucheron Gem Set Cocktail Ring. This next case begins with a ring that was never meant to be forgotten inside a box. It was created to be seen, to catch attention at social events, and to become part of the personality of the person wearing it. But with special pieces of jewelry, the real value is not always just about gold, diamonds, or gemstones. Sometimes the bigger question is, who wore it? And is the story behind the piece just as fascinating as the jewelry itself?
Well, this lady is Pat Marlowe, who was a socialite during the late 40s and 50s, working on the stage in the West End. One of the people that she met was Prince Ali Khan, and Prince Ali Khan, who married Rita Hayworth later on.
Right.
But he also had a liaison with Pat and had these jewels made for her.
The moment Pat Marlowe's name enters the story, this ring becomes more than just a beautiful piece of jewelry. It returns to the world it originally belonged to, the West End stage, high society, and the glamorous social circles of the late 1940s and 1950s. And that perfectly matches the spirit of cocktail jewelry. These pieces were not designed to disappear quietly on someone's hand. They were created to make a statement, with stronger colors, larger forms, and a much bolder personality. But the detail that completely changes this story is one name, Boucheron. One of the most respected jewelry maisons in France. When a piece carries the Boucheron Paris signature, collectors are not only looking at the gemstones themselves, they are looking at the design, the craftsmanship, and the history behind the maker. This ring shows exactly why. The rope pattern gold, combined with emeralds, sapphires, rubies, and diamonds, creates a vibrant design that reflects the energy of post-war jewelry, confident, colorful, and full of life. But another layer makes it even more interesting, the provenance. A Boucheron piece is already special. But a Boucheron piece once owned by someone connected to the stage, parties, and high society creates a much deeper story. Because this was not simply jewelry made to be owned. It was made to be worn, remembered, and become part of the image of the woman who carried it.
The ring, £5,000. The bracelet watch, £15,000.
Okay, thank you.
In other words, £20,000 for the two. Absolutely stonking.
£20,000 for both pieces. But what stayed with the expert was not only the value. Number 15, 30-carat Ceylon yellow sapphire ring. This next case begins with a ring that the family believed they had understood for decades. It had been carefully kept, worn on special occasions, and carried a deeply personal story. But there was one small detail that could change everything. The stone they had always called by one familiar name might not actually be what they thought. And in the world of gemstones, discovering a stone's true identity can sometimes reveal an entirely different story hidden beneath the surface.
My father bought her in 1945. During the war, he was in the RAF and he was serving in Ceylon and in Burma. When my mother and him got married, 1947, he gave it to my mother.
Did she wear it?
From the beginning, this ring was already more than just a piece of jewelry. Its story started in 1945, when her father was serving in the RAF in Ceylon and Burma before it later became a wedding gift for his wife in 1947. Over the years, it became part of the family's memories. But the biggest secret was hidden in the yellow stone at the center. For a long time, the family believed it was topaz. It was an easy mistake to make because different gemstones can sometimes share a very similar appearance. But when the expert examined it more closely, the truth was completely different. It was not topaz. It was not citrine. It was actually a golden yellow sapphire. Although sapphires are most commonly associated with their famous blue color, they can naturally appear in many different shades, including yellow. And what made this stone even more interesting was its Ceylon origin. Known today as Sri Lanka, this region has long been famous for producing sapphires sought after by collectors around the world. But the detail that made the ring truly stand out was its size. Around 30 carats. A sapphire of that scale is not only impressive because of its appearance, but also because of the journey behind it. From Ceylon during wartime, to the hands of an RAF serviceman, to a wedding gift, and finally a family treasure passed down through generations. A ring everyone believed was topaz was actually hiding a completely different story.
I think that your father, and indeed your mother, would be pleased to find out that you've got a stone worth £3,000 there.
No.
Yes.
3,000 pounds. But what makes this moment special is not just the market value, it is the fact that the family finally discovered the truth about something they had treasured for so many years. The ring was already meaningful because of the father who bought it, the mother who wore it, and the memories it carried. But now, it had another layer to its story. It was not just a yellow stone in a family ring. It was a 30-carat Ceylon yellow sapphire with a journey that began decades earlier. And that is what makes antiques so fascinating. Sometimes a treasure is not something lost or forgotten. Sometimes it has been right in front of you the entire time, just waiting for someone to finally reveal what it truly is. Number 16. Lover's Eye Ring. The next case begins with a ring carrying a design unusual enough to make almost anyone look twice. Why would someone wear the image of an eye? Not a complete portrait. Not an entire face. Just a single gaze captured inside a small piece of jewelry. But that mystery is exactly what once made lover's eye jewelry so fascinating. Because some pieces were never created for the whole world to understand. They were created to protect a secret known only to the person wearing them.
I bought it at an estate tag sale.
Okay.
And I ended up paying full price for it, but I don't remember how much it was.
A ring discovered at an estate sale always comes with unanswered questions. Who owned it before? What stories has it carried? And most importantly, is it truly what its appearance suggests? The design of this ring connects to one of the most intriguing traditions in antique jewelry, lover's eye jewelry. In the late 18th century, these pieces became popular among the British upper classes. Instead of carrying a full portrait of someone, they preserved only one detail, the eyes. Enough for the owner to recognize the person, but still hidden enough that outsiders would never know their true identity. That secrecy was the real magic of a lover's eye. It was not meant to publicly display a personal story. It was meant to hide one. A tiny image became a private memory that someone could carry with them. Today, original lover's eye pieces are highly desirable among collectors because each one feels almost impossible to duplicate. Every gaze represents a person, a relationship, and a story that has survived for centuries. But that popularity also creates a problem. Pieces like this can easily be recreated in an antique style. A ring can look romantic, mysterious, and historic, but appearance alone is not enough. In the collecting world, looking like history and actually coming from history are two completely different things. And that was the question the expert needed to answer.
I love them. What is problematic about collecting them is that they're very easily faked. I think that's the case of what you have here.
Really?
So I would say, considering that I feel that it's in the style of a lover's eye pin, it's worth about $200 to $300.
Not every discovery ends with a forgotten treasure worth thousands. Sometimes, the most important discovery is simply the truth. This ring still has a fascinating design and reflects one of the most romantic traditions in jewelry history. But it does not have the evidence needed to become the kind of original lover's eyepiece collectors search for. And that is one of the biggest differences in antique jewelry. Two objects can look almost identical, but one has truly traveled through history while the other was made to recreate it. Even though this was not the Georgian treasure someone might hope for, it still tells an interesting story. Because in the world of antiques, appearance is only the beginning. The real question is always what lies underneath. Does an object simply look like the past? Or did it actually live through it? Number 17, 1960s Van Cleef & Arpels Pearl and Diamond Ring. The next case begins with a ring whose biggest secret was not hidden in the most obvious place, but in one tiny detail that could easily be overlooked.
And when she passed, she left these two items to me in her will, and I remember admiring the ring because that was something that she would always wear when I'd see her Sunday night.
From the beginning, this ring already carried a special kind of value. Not because of a famous name, not because of an appraisal number, but because of the memories connected to the person who once owned it. This was not a piece of jewelry that was purchased and then locked away in a box. It was worn, loved, and became part of the image people remembered about its original owner. But when the expert looked closer, the ring started to reveal another side of its story. At the center was a pearl measuring around 14 millimeters, surrounded by platinum and diamonds set with a pavé technique. This method places small diamonds closely together, creating the effect of a surface covered almost entirely in light. With approximately 6 carats of diamonds, it was clearly a high-quality piece of jewelry. But the most important detail had not yet been revealed, because in high jewelry, precious materials are only one part of the story. The bigger question is, who created it? And the answer was hiding in a tiny mark on the ring. The owner had heard the name Van Cleef & Arpels before, but she never realized the real clue was on the very piece she remembered so clearly.
It is signed. VCA.
Van Cleef & Arpels.
Yeah.
Holy moly, she said something about Van Cleef & Arpels.
Just 3 small letters. VCA. But they completely changed the way this ring was seen. It was no longer simply a beautiful pearl and diamond ring from the 1960s. It became a piece connected to Van Cleef & Arpels, one of the most famous jewelry masons in the world. For collectors, that signature represents craftsmanship, design history, and the standards of a legendary name. That is why the value of this piece was not only measured by platinum, pearl, or diamonds. It was also about who made it. The ring was estimated at around $20,000 to $30,000 at auction, with an insurance replacement value reaching about $60,000. It was Van Cleef & Arpels. And sometimes in the world of antiques, the biggest discovery is not found in the brightest stone. It is hidden in a tiny mark waiting to be noticed. Number 18, Egyptian-style scarab jewel. The next case begins with a piece of jewelry that instantly brings to mind the world of ancient Egypt. A mysterious symbol, colorful gemstones, and a design that seems connected to pharaohs, tombs, and the civilization along the Nile. But in antique jewelry, appearance is only the first part of the story. The real question is not just what a piece looks like. It is where it truly came from, who created it, and what history is actually hidden behind the design.
My grandparents were traveling in Egypt at the time of the Suez Crisis, and they were staying at the Luxor Palace Hotel. And they met the solicitor to the king, and over a cocktail, he invited them to see his jewels that he was taking from the king over to New York.
With a story like that, this jewel immediately feels like something from an adventure. A trip to Egypt, an unexpected meeting, and a piece of jewelry brought home with an unforgettable memory. But when the expert looked closer, the most important detail was not only where it was found, it was the style behind it. At the center is a winged scarab, one of the most famous symbols of ancient Egypt, connected with rebirth, the sun, and protection. Around that symbol are emeralds, rubies, sapphires, and diamonds, creating a dramatic and colorful design meant to capture attention. However, the truth revealed another layer. This was not a jewel from ancient Egypt. It belonged to the Egyptian Revival style, where artists took inspiration from ancient symbols and recreated them through the craftsmanship of a later period. But that did not make it less valuable. Revival jewelry was not created to pretend to be an ancient artifact. Its value came from how another generation transformed its fascination with the past into art. With precious stones, detailed craftsmanship, and a powerful design, this jewel became more than just a decorative object. It became a piece that connected ancient inspiration with its own family history.
And here in the sunshine is an extremely colourful, very concentrated, hugely theatrical and wearable piece of jewellery. And all of this comes together to a jolly nice value of something like £8,000.
My goodness, absolutely no idea.
£8,000. But the value was not because this was a treasure from an ancient tomb or a piece thousands of years old. It came from a different kind of history. This scarab jewel showed how the mystery of ancient Egypt continued to inspire jewelry long after that civilization was gone. It combined symbolism, gemstones, and craftsmanship into a piece with its own identity. And that is what makes antique jewelry so interesting. Sometimes the first story we imagine is not the real one. But the truth hidden underneath can be just as fascinating. This jewel may not have belonged to the pharaohs, but it still carried the mystery and imagination that made ancient Egypt unforgettable. Number 19. Platinum Chaumet Burmese Ruby and Diamond Lapel Clip. The next case begins with a piece of jewelry that could easily be underestimated at first glance. Not a large diamond ring. Not something that immediately announces luxury. Just an unusual-looking clip that was once kept among a collection of small family items. But in antique jewelry, the real value is sometimes hidden in the details most people never notice. A special material, a tiny mark, or a name quietly engraved somewhere can completely change the story.
Well, I was 15 when I got it. It came in a rather untidy box, just of bits and bobs from my auntie. I just liked it, so I kept it safe and occasionally wore it.
That is exactly how many surprising discoveries begin. Not as a famous treasure passed down for generations, but simply as an object someone kept because they liked it. However, once the expert examined this lapel clip more closely, it started to reveal a very different story. Its design connects to the Art Deco period, a time when jewelry moved toward stronger, more modern, and more distinctive forms. Lapel clips were not just simple accessories. They were designed to become highlights on clothing, almost like small pieces of wearable art. And the materials used in this piece showed that it was far from ordinary. The clear section was rock crystal, combined with Burmese rubies at the center, diamonds around them, and everything was mounted in platinum. But even the gemstones were not the most important discovery. The biggest question was who created it. Once the name Chaumet appeared, the entire story changed. Chaumet is one of France's most prestigious jewelry masons, connected with Paris, European high society, and more than 2 centuries of high jewelry history. For collectors, a signed piece like this is not valued only by its rubies or diamonds. It also carries craftsmanship, design history, and the identity of a specific era. Something once kept in a box of bits and bobs turned out to have exactly the details collectors hoped to find.
It's not white gold, it would be platinum. The Burmese rubies in the centre and the quality of the brilliance flanking the rubies themselves do make it quite valuable. So I think if it was sold in an auction, we're looking at something in the realms of £2,000 for it.
£2,000. But what makes this clip special is not only the number. It is the journey from something that looked like an ordinary family item into a piece of French hide jewelry. Without those hidden details, many people might have only seen an unusual design. But the Chaumet signature, platinum, Burmese rubies, and craftsmanship revealed a completely different story. That is why the world of antiques is full of surprises. Sometimes the most important detail is not the brightest thing on the front. It is the tiny mark hidden behind it, proving where a piece truly came from and who created it. Number 20. 1950s jewelry collection worn by Marilyn Monroe. The next case begins with a very interesting question. Can a piece of jewelry without real diamonds or expensive gemstones still be worth thousands of pounds? For many people, costume jewelry simply means fashion accessories. But in the collecting world, value does not always come from the materials alone. Sometimes it comes from the design, the creator, the era it represents, and even the icons connected to the piece.
Well, in the 1980s, I was living in London, and I was invited to a private jewellery sale in a flat. And so as soon as I saw it, I thought, that's pirate treasure. I love it. I think it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
The interesting part is that the owner did not buy this collection thinking she had discovered a major investment. Her first reaction was much simpler. She saw something unusual, something beautiful, and she loved it. But behind those colorful pieces of jewelry was an important chapter in fashion history. Because not all costume jewelry was created simply to imitate fine jewelry. During the mid-20th century, many designers transformed it into its own form of art, where creativity and style could matter just as much as the materials themselves. The 1940s and 1950s became a golden period for costume jewelry, especially with the influence of Hollywood. When movie stars appeared wearing bold and memorable designs, these pieces became symbols of personality, glamour, and fashion. This collection includes names that are highly recognized by collectors, such as Miriam Haskell and DeMario. Their designs became known for their complexity, creative use of materials, and level of craftsmanship that went far beyond ordinary accessories. But the detail that makes this collection even more fascinating is a pair of Napier earrings. Not only because of how well they were made, but because of their connection to Marilyn Monroe, one of Hollywood's most unforgettable icons. And when a piece of jewelry becomes linked to such a powerful cultural image, the story's no longer only about what it is made from. Collectors are searching for the style, the history, and the feeling of the era that the piece represents.
The earrings tend to be not as popular as necklaces, but actually with their connection and also their Napier, they're incredibly well made. So I'd probably put them at £1,000, £1,500.
£1,500 for a pair of earrings without real diamonds. And that is exactly what makes this case different. It proves that jewelry is not always valued only by gold or gemstones. A design can become important because of who created it, the story behind it, and the mark it left on fashion history. From a private sale in a London apartment, pieces once bought simply because they looked beautiful turned out to preserve a part of 20th century culture. And maybe the owner described them perfectly from the beginning. A small treasure. Not because it was filled with real gold, but because every piece was hiding its own story,